that
Okay,
is.
how do we do that? What I'd like to do is call Suzanne and meet with you and sit there and just hear what are their plans.
So it doesn't turn
And
off
see
in like
if
2
there's anything in
seconds.
what they're
Yeah,
looking
let me,
to do.
it's under
Okay.
settings.
May I?
Go to the
Okay,
arrow,
that's-
the arrow that's pointing down next to your percentage battery
Okay,
icon.
yeah, okay. And you know, I've
Touch that and then
talked so
go
much this morning, my
to,
hair was about to explode.
Oh,
No, I mean,
you-
just chatting
yeah,
with,
staff.
yeah.
I did it in here.
So, and when by the time
No,
I
I'm sure you
came,
did.
I
I
got by
couldn't
your
figure it
office,
out.
you
That's
already
why
gone.
I'm totally asking.
But I was gonna ask you.
Oh, wait, no,
So that's
I
the only
lied.
thing I
Hang
brought
on.
to the surface for me.
That was to adjust the
Make
brightness.
sure that
That's
it's.
Go to the
an ongoing
9 dots.
relationship, and we'll have to
Got
figure
it.
out.
Okay.
And settings is the gear, the one with the
Got it.
gear.
Yep, got it. Got
And
it.
then go
The new relationship where the
to
pieces mesh. We
Display.
haven't done that yet.
display.
So I'm wondering about
Got to display.
economic development and where they fit into that
Yep,
sister city.
screen
Screen
timeout.
timeout.
Well, I'm not
That's
sure,
what
I'm
looking
not sure
for.
we've ever done
Thank you,
an
Mia.
We
economic
haven't.
component.
Got it.
Ever.
Thank
Ever.
you.
I know.
It's always been cultural and student exchange.
Oh, it was the brightness
And I'm
that's
not sure
under
they,
this,
Okay.
which you have to adjust.
Sister
Thank you.
Cities has a
I kept, it was so
specific-
frustrating because I was trying
I
to
know,
prepare
I
and
was
I walked away.
I'll
I'm like,
look into that.
It's gone! I was just looking at that.
I know
Like, I
that
was trying to
some
like
of
keep
the
a finger
sister
on it for a
cities
while.
individually.
because sometimes I read something and I'm like, think about it for a second. So I walk away and I'm like, ah.
Or like something happens at my house, which is usually
Tucson,
what interrupts
Tucson
me.
worked with somebody in Mexico. and I
Thank
don't know
you.
who it
That's
was, but
perfect.
that
I
was
just
also
needed-
part of
Because
the,
even though Tim could be sitting there doing absolutely nothing, they come to me while I'm
there's some-
reading.
what do they call it?
Can you help me with
I know what you're
seriously,
talking
your
about.
dad is
But
Sonora, Arizona.
You said that's Eric.
Oh, I think Arizona's
Like,
first.
And there
I'm
was,
like,
there
you
was
can't,
a,
you
there was
can't figure
a
that out.
crossover.
Well, and that was
Well, they
another
lost the
area that I
contract.
thought, because
So
you know,
he asked me if
a
I
couple
wanted
years
him
ago,
to
Mike
apply
and I
for
went to
this
that.
one, and I was like, I'm done. But
And I was
just
thinking,
make
if we,
sure
if
they-
if they have an active organization here, that would be helpful.
He's like, I'm done. I was like, no, because for real,
Work with
like,
us to build
they're
their
more
relationships.
Yeah.
Like not necessarily a casino, which is where that last meeting was,
Well, he
but
took khaki at first.
Canandaigua to see if there's something there that we could work on.
That's what I'm saying. I'm like, you stay over there
And
until
that's,
you
and
get done.
I'll just tie in that so far as
You
being
can just
trying
sit
to
and
talk to the Sonora businesses about
Like, it's to
coming
the point
into
like we do
a
really
more
Look at you
common
being
area.
all
needs to
executive.
make
And that's really the only thing
Pretty good
business
minimum
wise that I can
to even
recall,
make it
and
worthwhile
that isn't
for
associated with sister cities essentially.
Because otherwise it's just
But
like,
the fact that we are sisters, Canada is our sister cities.
hey girl, how you doing?
And that's the other thing too, is
I'm
the structure
good. It's good
in
to see you
Mexico
here.
really, for that type of thing, it's not the cities,
I like it.
that's the state level. That's the- So you get
It might
refer
be
right back to
the
people
past
involved.
meetings right here.
Tip people off because you're in somebody else's backyard doing something.
Right.
Yeah.
And all of that's
Like the
complications
per
of
se, they
those.
don't have a
And I'm
picture.
wondering,
Yes, ma'am, it is.
and they're very,
Oh, that's right. That's right. That's exactly, we gotta,
That's very
the
important.
situation we gotta
Unless
play
I
in,
know
try to be
I'm
effective in.
I do, I
There's
do.
some
type
challenges.
it up later, then
yeah, I agree, It's just, well, and the biggest one to begin with is whether our sister cities organization is really,
What about, and the thing is, I don't think they would be able for that type of thing to go for that type of thing. Is really working through Tony and whoever their counterparts are in
I have
the,
to write notes.
I guess it's the state level government that does most of this.
Oh,
So that's,
system.
and if there's
I
ways
color
we
code my
can
notes.
complement each other.
Oh, God, too much going on there, too much going on.
well, I'm gonna speak to
You
Suzanne
know what,
and
actually,
see
go
if they
for
want to sit with
those
us.
people that apparently have.
Well, the other thing too is we haven't talked about is
Paper has
I
like all
don't-
the tabs,
the
so I
old
put tabs
commission
in
used
there.
to do.
Okay. These are all my staff
Polls
names,
and
everyone's
runs.
name on there. And
No,
then
I did
like
see
city
it.
management meetings, regular notes.
It depends on how much they want to involve. It's not just our decision.
I don't
It's gotta be a
drink it,
joint
I don't
group.
drink pot, I
should've
drink
charged it
herbal non-caffeine, because when I get some caffeine, I'm like, they're like, oh, no caffeine, and I'm like,
Well, there is a role in what you suggested is probably better.
yeah.
Different things for different ailments, I'll say ailments.
The question is what's practical, what's reasonable, what's gonna be effective.
Things out of that.
Somebody's missing Rachel.
I can't do it.
Like,
Bunch of caffeine and calories.
I don't take that. I don't.
I drink coffee. Cold coffee.
Finance manager.
I do not.
I mean,
Must be a millennial.
Hey. Hey, watch the millennial talk.
Ew, I'm not a millennial. I know they try to look me in there, and I'm like, oh, no.
Yeah, we do
I'm
try
an
to claim
actor.
Christine. She's like, she's one of ours.
When were you born? You're under 40.
I am for another
Yeah, me too.
6 or 7 months.
you will be on it, yeah. I think I know.
I'm 80.
You're a millennial.
No.
It's like an older millennial.
Interactions.
No, refuse.
In that area.
She's got it.
I refuse.
So Carrie Lang.
Melanie, thanks for coming. Appreciate
Older
it.
millennial.
Okay. All right. And we'll see you tomorrow morning for breakfast. You can come to
Leaving early.
the leadership thing
Is that
tomorrow?
Thursday?
Is that Thursday or tomorrow?
I think it's Thursday.
Okay,
Oh
bad
wait,
idea.
I'm thinking of the community.
Yeah. Well, you gotta work too. I understand that.
You know, I'm not gonna go if I don't have to.
Oh, 2 jobs. You're good.
Okay, good job.
Yeah, I was in time.
What am I thinking? I'm thinking of the community lunch. What's the one
Tomorrow?
that SSBEC is doing?
Well, that's a community lunch.
That's Thursday.
Yeah, and I'm going to the mayor manager's lunch. I've already gotten the other brief, so
Yeah, there you go.
I saw the brief on Monday for the SSBEC. There we go. Now it's 3 o'clock. Okay, I'll call the meeting to order for the Sierra Vista City Council, October 10, 2019, the work session that we only missed, October 8th. I'm looking at the wrong schedule, October 8th. Everybody's here, save the Mayor Pro Tem, and I'm sure she'll be here shortly. We'll go to the first item, which is the meeting agenda for the October 10th regular meeting. And obviously we start with a call to the public, a roll call, invocation, pledge of allegiance, and then they have acceptance of the agenda. Is there any issue with the items on the agenda, any changes or any things that need to be changed? Okay. Then we have a number of awards and presentations. DeVette recognized Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Chuck is next with the upcoming meetings and bids, etc. Anything you want to share with us today?
I'll have had a CCOM JPA board meeting that morning, so I'll be able to update you about that. So that's the only thing I know of for sure right now. So
Okay.
just got back, so
And
getting my mind.
He's still on vacation.
and next is
3 hour jet lag.
next is item 2, which would be the discussion of the tabled item, which is the modification to the refuse service and fee schedule. We have a presentation on this today.
Yeah,
Okay.
Victoria will be doing the presentation, and then Sharon's here, and I'm here to help fill in and answer questions. So.
And Dave will be here in just a minute, so.
Okay.
Okay,
You're
thanks,
on.
Mayor. So we put together a presentation. There's been a lot of questions since we talked about this last time. And so some of this is information that was asked for. This is some information to clarify, some information about the fund in general, and so on. So real quick, the functions that make up the refuse service and what is in the refuse enterprise fund are these services here: our residential refuse disposal, commercial, special pickups, including green waste and bulky waste, our green waste to compost program, and recycling. So all these services together make up the refuse service. This is how the refuse fund finished fiscal year 19, last fiscal year. We started the year 330,000 up. We finished the year $109,458 in the red. The fund has run into the red in the past. It hasn't done so for quite some time, but it did run into the red in 2019. You can see the difference was $439,507 revenue compared to expenses.
Sorry, when did the rate increase go up during that time?
It
Or was that-
was
'Cause I
in
can't
fiscal year
remember.
18.
Yeah.
Oh, so that's with
Few years
the
ago.
entire year.
Yes.
Okay.
And I know we have some new council members since that time, but at that time, we looked at a rate increase recommendation of double of what was finally approved by the council. And at that time, I thought that was a prudent decision because it's giving us some time to take a look at a few things. But I recollect saying that it might not be enough and we would probably be having to revisit this issue, so here we are.
Okay.
Did say that.
And so the current proposal that is in the agenda item is recapped here. It would have changed the pickup fee for greenways to $44.85, instituted a $10 drop-off fee for greenways for both city and county residents, increased the cost of the finished compost from $15 to $25 a cubic yard, and then also increased the bulky special pickup fee also to $44.85. The dumpster fee increase has not been modified since what you originally saw, and that would be the increase in revenue to that service, and so altogether approximately $305,000. David did take a look at these fees, and he scaled down our proposal about 20%, just assuming that we would see some drop in people using the services, and so we'd originally said about $333,000 to $50,000. We did scale that back from what you were originally, numbers that were originally shared with you. So,
And I just want to say, if you take a look, the real number that we really need to be looking at is not the 109,000 that we're down, but the 458 that we lost last year. So we don't want to get in a situation where we're compounding that number. The proposal that was before you on the fee still didn't get to the 458. So, and that was the original proposal.
So we'll still be operating in the red though?
In all likelihood, yes.
Yes. So the status of the compost operations. So revenues for last year were just over 53,000. The biosolids that we use from the sewer enterprise are considered revenue on the refuse side. If we did not do that, then the sewer fund would have to be charged to get rid of those biosolids. So this helps the city, and it helps the sewer fund and the refuse fund to sell those to the refuse fund. We would have to pay to dispose of them in any case.
And also points out the greater importance of the composting program besides just allowing people the opportunity to bring green waste in and compost. There is an actual purpose to it that's beneficial to all the ratepayers.
But when you look at salaries and O&M costs, that part of the service in itself is running just over $100,000 in the red.
So isn't this program it's a separate, it's all one enterprise program, but it's this part that's putting us in the red?
Not this part solely. When Public Works and Sharon and her staff looked at the refuse fund as a whole, that was the original proposal, that there are 3 parts of it that were running in the red. And that was the dumpster program, the special pickups, and the compost program. So the question was asked before about compost equipment and needing to replace these items in the future. The bad news is the cost has gone up quite a bit from when we purchased these items. It is not, we don't need to rush out and buy these items next year though. So Sharon and her team did what's an appropriate expected lifespan for these pieces of equipment. What would the expected replacement year then be if everything runs perfectly and we make it until then? So we're not looking at needing to replace pieces of equipment until approximately 2024. Having the fund run in the red, though, does mean that there is not a lot of additional money, if any at all, to budget for new equipment.
So that's obviously a consideration for us. Yeah, I personally think it's smarter to charge a little more and bank some dollars for future expenditures rather than all of a sudden it breaks and we got to replace it and we have to borrow it from somewhere else within the budget or from an outside agency. So my concern is we're not covering expected costs and again, we should do that over, to me it makes sense to do it a little bit over time rather than the year before or the year it breaks to come up with a
Well, and
with
that's a
funding.
good point, Mayor. If you look on the list, you can see the replacement year, and within a 5-year time frame between 2024 and 29, many of the items on that list are going to need to be replaced during that time frame. And obviously, we would finance them, but we're in the situation now where we're running so tight. We would need to factor in what future rates would need to be in order to establish a
either
safety fund.
future rates or have them artificially higher to bank money.
That's true.
So there's a couple of options there. And it's, what can we tolerate as a council and what do we think the citizens can tolerate? And again, I don't know we don't know what the lending rates or costs are going to be in the future either.
Well, right now they're favorable.
Right now they're favorable, but they haven't, in the past they haven't been favorable sometimes.
Just a quick question with the estimated replacement price. Is that projected out to the replacement year or is that as of today?
That was as of today, right, Sharon?
So costs would go up.
Even more for the
Yeah.
Mayor,
Please.
so if we're running in the red, obviously we don't have the capability, even if we do borrow either from the general fund or outside financing, how would we pay for that? Would that be like what the mayor's talking about now, or just have to do a sudden jump in rates?
Well, there's two ways to look at it. One would be to establish a rate that would take into account replacement costs. Now, I mean, we also have to take a look at refuse truck replacement and that kind of thing as well when we look ahead. So this is actually the smaller portion of it, but we would have to look at all of that and establish a rate now that would establish the funds to purchase these things, as we go, as opposed to then financing them and probably looking at larger rate increases
Right.
later.
To cover the debt service, I'm assuming.
Yes.
And is it my understanding that the current proposal does not cover additional for any debt service we might?
Right now, we're not looking at a overall rate increase.
No, I understand. I'm talking about the original proposal of fees
Yeah.
at the 44 and some change. Those do not cover
Still
factoring
won't.
in saving for debt service monies or buying outright this equipment,
Yeah,
correct?
and I think the picture we're really painting here is one that even though we're not looking at, proposing a rate increase at this moment, because there's a few things within the operation I want to look at a little closer.
Right.
Because this has really opened up a lot of questions that we need to, as a staff, look at. But I don't think even doing, the fee schedule as proposed or the other one that we're looking at, we would be able to forestall a rate increase within the next 2 fiscal years.
Can we get a depreciation value for the equipment also? What it would be worth right now? The equipment on hand?
Dave?
Well, that would just depend on the market. I mean, we fully depreciated equipment, and depending on who's out there looking to buy what, we can get 1 year, you can get $7,000 for a refuse truck, the next year you can get 15 for the same truck. And the book value is 0, so until you actually go to sell it, you really have no idea what you're gonna get. They're all sold at auction through the public surplus, so we get the maximum value for it at that time. But I wouldn't feel comfortable projecting any
Okay.
sort of.
Thank you.
The other thing we're not really talking about here is the actual tipping fee at the landfill is really the largest cost factor we have in the refuse fund. And we have a very high tipping fee when compared to the rest of the state. A lot of that has to do with the distances that have to be traveled to get to the landfill within the county. And a lot of it has to do with relatively low levels of refuse that can generate revenue to support the landfill operations. So we have a higher tipping fee than most, but we do have, there is a bright spot in the horizon because right now we're in the process of paying back the supervisors some $2.5 million that they threw in to help balance the landfill fund, and we're about halfway through paying that off. So it is possible that actual tipping fees, at the very least, will be stabilized going forward, and we could probably even take a look at a potential reduction in those fees. But I don't think that will forestall the need to relook at rates here within the next year or two.
And that's also just a possible,
Yeah.
right? Not necessarily a probable.
Yeah, well, the supervisors will be paid off, so that.
No, I understand that, but it's not a probable that rates will get lowered. It's just a possibility, is what I'm asking.
Yes, it's a possibility.
I would say.
I'm currently the chair of the group, but
Yeah.
but I'm also old.
And also, Sharon mentioned the first time she mentioned if we didn't replace it, an alternative would be some of these would be covered by contracting it out, but do we know, like cost comparison wise, what that would,
Sharon and I went over it with the last fees that we have used, the last proposal we had. Contracting out the chipping would be about $497,000 per year.
oh, okay. That
That's
answers
the
that
all
question.
included. So
Yeah.
as you can see, payback and then chipper and that one is real quick.
Yeah.
So, and we have looked at actually trying to contract out the entire landfill and refuse operation across the county, and we don't even get bids.
It's not viable.
Yeah, it's not profitable
Not at all.
for somebody else to run it, and we have tried that without success.
I just would talk about, we talked a little bit about potential future financing and that kind of stuff. And I don't necessarily think financing is a bad thing. We've had a good record. We've been able to get for replacement of equipment in the future. And I don't think financing is essentially a bad thing, but when we do borrow money, we need to be very prudent in what we do and why we're doing it. And we need to make sure, again, when we borrow the money, that we have the revenue coming in to meet the additional cost of the financing. And that's kind of why I asked those questions earlier, is because I want to make sure everybody's aware that there's more than one way to do this, but there are additional costs when we do the financing.
Yeah,
Rather than raise rates earlier and have at least some money on hand to be able to deal with the costs.
yeah. When we look at, say, this equipment list, for example, when we talk about all these things that are probably going to need to be replaced within a 5-year time frame, what we don't want to do is have them all break down all at once and they have to finance everything all at once. We would rather stagger those over a period of time and do them, one or two at a time, as opposed to, oh gosh, you got $2 million worth of equipment we have to replace here. That's when things get tougher and make it more difficult.
And just because I don't know, is the purchase price like a down payment out of this amount, or is it in addition
That's
to?
what we originally paid for those pieces of equipment.
Oh, this is how much they've gone up.
The existing, yeah, that's.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, I have one more question.
Go for it.
We're talking about financing. So this is just more out of curiosity and just kind of because I don't know, Chuck. But so let's say that, the worst case scenario happens and all the equipment up until the replacement 2029, which is about 1.89 million, if you subtract the other 3 out, let's say all of that broke down within a relatively short period of time, and we had to finance with the fund currently running in the red, we have to borrow money from the general fund to pay again for the debt service? So we would be actually paying back 2 loans at that point?
No, basically, unfortunately, the situation, if that happened, generally when we finance, we pay down 10%,
Right.
for down payment. But, before that happens, we would be asking for, you guys to consider a rate increase
Okay.
to cover that.
So again, we're back to either doing it now or doing it suddenly. It's not necessarily rates again, that's not what I'm saying,
Yeah.
but looking at,
Yeah, I mean, the general fund could loan, the refuse fund money, but it would just be a different borrowing source than going out commercially. So it still would be to have the same impact.
right.
Without, I agree with what you said, Mr. Mayor, with operating a red and giving some cushion, I guess if you would, for the maintenance coming forward. But without going back to the old proposal, is there a way to make up that $109,000 without
It's
residential rate
it's
increases?
400 and something thousand.
No,
Just
on
by
the
the
proposal, it's
PowerPoint.
only $109,000.
No, it's because we had the extra from the year before
It's
that
still
we put
400
towards
and
that.
a-
It was 300.
we've gotta make up for.
something. We have to
No, no.
make up
That's the
400,000.
number.
What I'm saying is, on the proposal, they're making up $300 and some thousand dollars.
They're not, because that's what's been left over in the fund that we
Victoria,
added.
can you explain that again, please?
Yeah. No, I'm past that one.
You're on the fiscal year
I'm on
2019
the current fee
estimate?
increase proposal. The fee increases is $305,000. With a fee increase of $305,000 on our current debt of $439,000 in the red, we're only operating at $109,000, give or take some change in the red. So is there a
If
way?
you implement the fees.
If
Yeah,
we implement the
that's
fees.
correct, that's correct.
So my question on that is, do we have something besides the original proposal that can make up that 109,000, give or take 1,000, whatever it is, I can do the math between?
Well, without raising rates, we would have to take a look at those fees and probably propose greater fee increases in those areas than are being proposed right now. And I think one thing that's important and why staff initially is recommending fee increases in these areas as opposed to a regular rate increase. And it's all really a matter, I talked to a few of you about that after the work session a few weeks ago. A rate increase applies to all ratepayers, okay? But specific services within the fund, like the use of compost or the use of residential dumpsters and that kind of thing, really only apply to the users of those particular services. So if those services are losing money, at current rates, then it seems appropriate then to adjust the rates so that those particular users that are benefiting from those things end up paying for it as opposed to the entire rate base helping to cover the services that are used by fewer people. Now, sometimes that gets into an issue of, let's say we're talking about increasing rates for special pickups.
Fees.
Okay, now, well, I'm just using that as an example right now. So a special pickup, is something that may have value to the entire rate base or the entire community, because if the rate is too high and people don't want to take advantage of special pickups, then that could potentially end up in a situation where you start seeing more wildcat dumping, which would be detrimental to the community. And that's a policy decision then of the council to determine, whether or not that service is important enough that you're willing to have others subsidize it a little bit in order to make up, the difference. So that's just an example of how that works, but that's more a policy decision.
Do we have a history on that? Like before we did special pickups or have fees for it, was there a lot of wildcat?
Well, we have had situations where we have had
Because we have
wildcat.
dumping now.
Yes.
Without,
Well,
with
it used
the
to be,
fees
it used to
that
be a
they
lot
have.
worse.
So people don't even want to pay for it now sometimes, and we end up in a wildcat
I
dumping
think they'll
situation.
still not want to pay for it regardless.
And that's the-
So you're looking at it
Just saying.
possibly increasing is what you're saying.
It-
Yeah, but I'm saying
Yeah,
they're not
a fee
paying for it
increase-
now, then it would-
Yeah, fee increase
So why would
on
they-
special pickups could potentially wind up with more wildcat dumping.
people
For
Which is
example.
gonna cost us more also,
And then,
clean it up.
and then, then we have to go into cleanups, and those cost money too, as, Matt can talk about some of that situation as well.
Were there fee increases? I saw that last page, we had some possible, was that possible fee increases?
I think we
No.
interrupted
The last
her before
page.
she got there.
Say that again?
I think we interrupted Victoria
Okay,
before she
yeah,
got
so
there.
There's a few more slides.
Yeah,
Okay.
why don't we look-
I'll wait until you get,
Why don't we,
okay.
yeah, why don't we wait till we get the,
Okay.
Okay, so we know that there was some discomfort with the increase to some of the fees that were proposed. And so staff put together an alternative proposal that focused on covering the actual cost of the special pickups. And that's the $23 fee you see there. Sharon and her crew sharpened their pencils and calculated exactly what the break-even cost was for a special pickup, and that was $23.
Break even.
Right, so the alternative proposal would set the special pickup fee for both green waste and bulky pickups at $23. It would keep the increase to the compost of $25, an increase of $10 a load. We didn't touch the dumpster fees. It would also keep the drop-off cost free for city residents and $5 for county residents as it is currently. So that alternative proposal would bring in approximately $160,000.
Or just a little bit more than half of what the other proposal would have done, so, which means you'd be looking at 250 or, around that in terms of a projected loss for the fund for next year, instead of 100 or so.
I really appreciate that you went through all the work of Sharon. I can't see Sharon, but I know she's over there. of putting an alternative proposal together. I know maybe this doesn't address the one issue though with the commercial haulers, or can we just recognize somebody that's has
So we
a
do
residential?
have fees for commercial haulers, and I'll let Sharon talk about how that's handled at the
Yeah.
compost facility.
We do have an existing fee for commercial haulers. The difficulty sometimes is determining who is a commercial hauler and who is a residential hauler. Many of them have unmarked trucks, they come several times a day with a residential bill. So
Can we stamp the
Can we
bill
just,
or
yeah, that's what I'm
marker?
saying, can't we handle that and just say you get one and like a stamp or a star?
When they look at it,
Little
just
Yeah.
star sticker.
and we've
don't take the sticker off.
I do
so
like
marker.
star sticker.
A
I
stamp,
do.
a stamp.
Um,
You can't erase it.
We threw around a bunch of different ideas at Public Works, trying to see if we could come up with a solution to that. It ends up being difficult, in terms of recognizing who they are. We change people out at the gate throughout the day. It's not, the same person all day long. We can try to, take some steps there and get better cost recovery on the commercial, but bottom line is it's difficult, and it is because a lot of them are just very small operations. They don't have a big name stamped across their truck.
The driver's license have to encode the encryption in them, the Arizona driver's license, where you can scan it. It brings out your name and address, everything that's on your driver's license. We can build and track a database using that, to where if we got a scanner, once they scan it, if they have one or two free, or they use it once, we can track it that way, because it automatically populate the database. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
There's something to look into, because it's on there, we have it. If they're driving there, they gotta have a license anyway.
a simple way to do it is say residential's can have one pickup a month or two pickups a month, and they come in with a bill and you just date stamp it. So the next time it comes in, you can say, okay, your bill says you've been here twice already today. You don't get to get a pickup, or we'll charge you commercial rates. It's their option.
And then if
So
staff
there's simple-
switch out. it's
But the
fine.
thing is, if staff
That's
switch,
good.
if they've got the policy, then,
Yeah,
I mean, we gotta keep it simple if we do something like this.
I like that idea.
I think something does need to be done with the commercial hauling situation. I think it's far too cheap right now, and unfortunately that'll mean higher, costs to residents for landscaping services and that kind of thing, probably, but.
Well, I'm sure the residents are already probably being charged commercial rates for topsoil, even though they get or the mulch or whatever it's gonna be. The
I'm sure of
compost.
that too, Mayor. So
Yeah.
it's
I'm not sure, I'm not sure that's a real consideration, Chuck.
on both ends, but I mean, it's, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, we put together some information just so council could see what the difference is if the prices were adjusted. You can see we have an estimated revenue for the bulky and green waste pickups at $23 a load. We just did the numbers on $25, $35, and then the $44.85 a load. So you can see the changes in revenue at each price point. And we also included the revenue for the green waste drop-off fees if you were to keep the $5 for city residents or charge $10 for everyone across the board. And for the compost sales, the amounts, if we were to increase the compost $5 or $10 per load increase, those are the amounts of additional revenue that could be projected.
Is there, I don't know what variable you use, is there a way to do it if between 23 and 45 with a decrease in drop-offs or pickups? If for once, one of the big things we're talking about and issues we have is if we go to 44.85 for bulky and green waste pickup, people won't use it. So there's a way to estimate if we do lower it to $23, if they don't use it and we have lower numbers
We included a 20% decrease
on each one.
in the
Okay,
service.
thank you.
Yeah, for both special pickups and a decrease in people purchasing compost.
Thank you.
What if we did, because this is part of kind of what I feel is I do think that as a city resident, we should get a little bit of a decrease because we are the ones paying for the fee. What if we bumped up the green waste drop-off fees to $10 for city residents, which I think is what's proposed right now, and then did 15 for everybody who's not. So that would still be in with what's going on. We still give our city residents a, hey, we recognize you're in the city and we recognize that you guys are the ones
And it's still
basically-
cheaper than
and
special
it's still
pickup.
cheaper than special pickup.
David?
So you're saying
Still
$10 for city, 15 for everyone else?
Mhm.
That would be 140,000. Because the difference, the $5 difference is the 85 minus the 27, so it's about a $57,000 difference if we wanted.
And that way, we wouldn't have to go up quite to the 44.85. I've had a lot of complaints, I know some other people
Yeah.
have as well, about that strategic huge difference. If we bumped it that way, we'd be able to offset it a little bit on the bulky and green waste pickup.
Another idea, I don't know if you're looking into it, with the county raising their recycling fee or charging to recycle now, is there any way we could do the same thing with green waste drop-offs, do with recycling? Anyone in the city is free. If you're in the county, it's $10 fee or whatever the county's fee is. I'm pretty sure since the county did that, our recycling has increased.
Sure.
Go ahead, Sharon. You can say it.
You can,
Well, again, I think the tracking there ends up being a big challenge in separating out city from the county, and I see some potential other issues as well. Not that it's not an idea worth considering, but I think there's some potential issues there.
Well, and there's good reasons why the county is charging for for recycling, and that gets to the commodities. We don't have all the numbers yet, and I hate to talk too early on it because I'd like to see some more data come in. But clearly, as we thought, the participation rates and diversion rates from the landfill for the program that we have right now are down considerably. Plastic is an issue. Gosh, how many tons of plastic have we done?
Well,
Only a
plastic
couple.
actually isn't as bad. Cardboard.
Cardboard is really a tough situation right now. And effectively, metals are really the only recyclable that has any potential. But we're not diverting a lot from the landfill when we do that. So recycling isn't really helping us in this in this discussion at all.
And then finally, just for information, again, there's no recommendation being made on rate increases, but this is what a 5% and a 10% rate increase would bring in and what that would increase the monthly bill for customers.
Can I ask on this slide, is there a history or discussion of would it cost less to run the program if we only picked up once a week?
State law.
It's state law.
But you have to pick up twice a week?
Yes.
We can apply for a variance, but my opinion is by the time we went to all the work of doing that and everything, we're not actually saving anything.
Yeah. And the other thing I'd like to say, Sarah, because that has come up in the past, is really when you look at our rates overall in comparison even with private haulers or others, despite the tipping fee we have to pay at the landfill, our rates for refuse are very low in comparison with other communities. And then the other issue you run into, Sarah, when you get into one pickup, well, you see some of the issues that are going on in California with trash. We want a clean community, and 2 pickups I think lends more to that than one would.
It does. I mean, a family of 3, we need the 2 pickups. So
And I will tell you
we'll take it
historically,
more.
when we talked about bringing the cans on, going from, I'm going way back here, we used to pick up in the alleys, and then we went to the cans. We had a community-wide discussion on whether it was going to be 1 pickup or 2 pickups. And we have a variety of folks like me that I could probably put 3/4 of a can of trash every 2 weeks out on a curb because I do the yard waste, I do the composting, and I do the recycling and all the other stuff. So I don't have that, but again, it's everybody doesn't have the same lifestyle. That's the challenge. Some people need 2 pickups a week and fill the damn can up 2 pickups a week. So it's kind of like going with the lowest common denominator to meet the need of the public, and it affects obviously it affects the entire system.
Seems intrusive of a state law to regulate cities in that way.
Well, it is.
They're
but-
all intrusive when they're regulating us.
They get all in
That's
our
what they like.
business.
to
Well,
do.
and I think, Sarah, when ADQ actually are the ones that have that regulation out there, and every state is different, and I think they're looking at Arizona, the climate here, those kind of things, and how long you want trash
Sitting
laying
around,
around, and that kind of thing, and problems with animals and
Health hazards.
spoilage and that
Right.
kind
Mosquitoes
of thing.
in the summer and monsoon, yeah.
Lots to think about.
That 5% rate increase doesn't really increase income very much.
No, it's up to
Well,
10.
Really what, the better way to look at it is that combined with the fee increases, gets you pretty close to where you need to be, at least for a little while.
That was going to be my question earlier. If we were to enact rate increases, would we still look at all of the other increases or the rates that we talked about?
The fee
The fees
increases,
that we talked
yes.
about, okay. It's not exchanging one for the other.
No, fundamentally, each of those services needs to do better, recover costs better.
Quite honestly, knowing the work that you guys put into coming up with this, is there anything else that
Some.
I don't see what else to ask you to look into to rate to make a better, to make us break even and have something left to
Put away.
I'm worried about our machines, yeah. So, I don't, if you have anything else to offer that as possibilities that, may seem far-fetched, but we might need to consider.
Well, Glenn, we're currently in the process of looking at a route study, and actually Matt's Stafford Blake is really good with GIS systems and has developed some things, and we're going to meet as a staff to take a look at, and that's what I'm referring to when I talked about this at the start of the presentation is, I'd still like to take a look at some operational efficiencies with routes, and we're currently in the process of that. I don't know exactly, how much that would save. Again, I don't think it would save enough to overcome, the issues that we're looking at. We don't take rate increases lightly here. We haven't really done it that much. The history hasn't shown that, and obviously people don't like them. But at some point, a lot of this started when the legislature said that commercial haulers could come in and take our commercial business from us, and ever since that time, it's been more and more of a struggle because we've probably lost half of our commercial accounts as a result of that, and it's just making it tougher and tougher to break even every year. And I expect that trend will probably continue.
Well, I would say too, the cost of living in a community, nothing else is coming down. The cost of the trucks is not getting cheaper. The cost of gas is not getting less. As a citizen in the community, I expect.
Personnel costs too.
Pardon me?
Personnel costs.
Personnel costs, that's a huge one. And because I live in the city, I expect that it's going to cost me to live here. And my personal opinion is just that when we've explored every possibility, if we need to increase rates, we increase rates. The other little piece rates and fees, the other little piece too is trying to help the public understand or get this. My general sense of it is they get it. Most people who live in a community, they get it. Sometimes there's noise about prices going up, and prices go up. We shop in a grocery store every week. There's a difference in prices. Plus the fact that, maybe I should go off on that bandwagon, but or soapbox. But so I will believe that, and I understand that you've done much of what you can, plus you're still looking into it. And I personally, if we need to increase the rates for all of us to make all of our living in this community better, I'm okay with that. So I know we're not voting or anything right now, we're still looking into this, but I appreciate the work that's been put into this, and I think hopefully by making these comments, if people have strong feelings about it, they'll talk to us about it and come up with something that works even better. But the rubber's going to hit the road when these large pieces of equipment start failing, and we start trying to figure out how we're going to keep our community as a clean and efficient and doing the things that we need to do to help our citizens, how we're going to do that without the equipment that we need to do it. So if you come up, if you have other ideas, put them on the table, and otherwise, I think we're all going to do what we believe is best for
Yeah, I want to get back to what's coming up on Thursday. I want to thank the staff for taking the time to go through and answer specific questions, bring up some additional data, to engendering some good discussion by the council on this issue. But really, when the should the item come off the table on Tuesday, and I'm assuming it's going to, what is the staff recommendation?
Well, Mr.
Specifically.
Mayor, actually, since, we did bring up rates initially, I was not going to recommend any rate increases. I don't know, what the council desires. We could recommend, let's say, a 5% rate increase in one of the options here, if you wanted to bite the bullet all at once, or you could amend that to take it off for that matter. But I would recommend right now, letting us, sharpen our recommendation a little bit further and leave it on the table for this next meeting still. So, and then we can come back and have another discussion, at the next work session.
I would tell you that I don't mind if we have to bite off a little bit this year and bite off another little bit next year, and maybe even the year after that, so that we don't have a major impact on the economy is just now starting to move a little bit the right way, the right direction. But again, that's something that needs to be considered in our strategy as well as the council.
So what I would like to do is at the next work session is present you a fee increase proposal with the rate increase, and show you exactly what those numbers are going to mean to the fund.
Okay.
And try to project what that means to the fund over a period of time, say at least another couple years, and then that'll give us a better idea of what it should be. And then if you choose not to do that, we may even be able to project, well, if you don't want to do the rate this year for next calendar year or whatever, then we would know pretty much what we would need to do the following year then, and show you what it means. That's what I would like to do.
Okay.
May I throw this in the mix too? And I'm not sure how much of this was in what you just said, but in looking at these bulky green waste pickup amounts, 23, 25, 35, does it make any sense to do a gradual increase over a period of years like that? Like, for instance, 23 or say 25, if we were to do that this year, and then 35 next year, and then 40 for the next year. Does that make any sense?
We could look at an incremental approach.
We also look
Dave.
at,
Two things. One is, Councilman Cone, yes, in the past, years back, when we were converting over and there were a whole bunch of other issues with the refuse fund at the time, the council at the time passed a rate increase that took effect that 6 months later and the following year. They passed a 2-year rate increase when they passed the option. Second issue is, I'll bring up the reminder that if you do wish to raise the rates or wish to discuss raising the rates at the council meeting, possibly voting on it, I need to get that noticed on the website, because the legislature passed the state law that says you
That's
cannot
what I was gonna
increase any fee on any commercial business without a 60-day notice put on the website prior to your vote on that rate increase. So I'll get with Judy tomorrow, at least get it put out there. Whether or not you decide to even discuss it, we'll be proactive. I just want to let you know that we'll get it out there, so if somebody brings it forward, you guys can express that this is just something we're in discussion of. It's not set yet, but to discuss it, we really need to have it on the website.
Thank you. We're next.
Yes.
And then Sarah.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I just want to say, and I know it was my idea, but I still maintain that I would really like to see it go to, because I'm looking at the compost fees, have them all go to $10 for everybody, do $15 for out of county, and take that off so we don't have to go straight to $44.85 on the special pickups. And then we need an increase, in my opinion. There's nothing that we can do about that, but at least we can offset it, and I'd like to see it offset.
So we need to sharpen our stubby pencil on that and see what the results are. Is there-
that was my thought, was just being able to look at the difference in city and out of city drop-offs for, and also the commercial, I mean, if there was a way to address the commercial haulers, that's something that we want to make sure we look at.
Well,
I just want to, when you say we need an increase, a rate increase, you're talking about the proposal for the special, not the rate fees. Okay.
fees, okay? So I'm assuming it's not gonna come off the table when I call for it on Thursday. And we'll continue to work and staff this.
And when you publish it, it's gonna be the fees and the rates that we're,
That's the rate.
that,
Well,
Actually, all I need to publish is the fact that the council is considering a refuse rate increase.
okay, then you don't need to,
General rates, I don't
you don't
have.
need
Because
to
we
have
have-
specific
information
numbers.
on it. I don't
Okay.
have to
Okay.
put 10%, 5% proposal.
So then that tells me if it's gotta be published, then that means we're not gonna vote on it for 60 days.
Carolyn, the notice on the potential
You
fee
could
increase
vote on
was
it.
already done.
yeah, that's why I
You can
wanted
vote
to.
on this one.
Well, we can have it,
The
but,
fees you can do, it's the rate.
It's if
Okay.
you decide to do a 10%, 5 or 10%
okay,
rate
okay, I got it, rates are different than fees.
Yeah.
Got you, okay. Yes, sir.
Is there a way we can get either a meet and greet or a town hall set up to talk about, to set up a time and place for the public to come talk to us?
I think once we have more concrete ideas of what we need.
We need to consider that then. I would agree. Okay. Anything else on item 2?
Thank you guys so much.
Okay, it was a good discussion. Thanks, staff. Sharon, you did a lot of work.
Sorry, it wasn't.
Appreciate that.
Anyone else I didn't say.
Okay, next item is a public hearing item number 3. Series 7 liquor license for Hampton Inn. Any discussion or comment, staff report? Is this standard?
It's a standard administrative, it's a person transfer, the agent, owner. It's required by the state law that if anything like this, there has to be a public hearing. This is why it's not one of the special events that we can approve at a staff level, that they do require a public body, public hearing, and that's why all 3 of these are before you on Thursday.
Okay.
Does that mean there's a bar there at Hampton Inn? Is that
They
what-
do have that service, it's also so that they can serve into their rooms through that, so.
Room
they use
service.
that for that, yes. But it's been there, it's just an administrative action on this one.
Okay, any items, any further questions on item 3? Go to item 4, is another Series 9 liquor license. Jill?
And this is actually a new liquor store that's going into, it's the little triple mini mall down at 999, I believe, Fry Boulevard.
Vista Park.
Yeah, it's a liquor license that was purchased and being brought up from Douglas, and he is putting in a liquor store. He's got a convenience store that I think he's already opened the convenience part of it.
At 999?
Yeah, back in that little shopping center there. And
Oh, it's
so
opposites.
this is a new business to town, actually.
That makes you-
Okay. Any other questions on item number 4? No discussion? We'll go to item number 5, and it's a bingo license.
I didn't know
Is
this
that-
was
Oh,
something.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Places
That's what I
And-
said.
Yeah. And they watch it like a hawk, too. believe
Yeah,
me.
it's state law that you have to go through this, you have to have a public hearing, for any facility that's doing regular bingo. And they've been doing it for a while, and someone finally said, hey, we haven't done one since 2005, I think is the last bingo license that we've issued, so.
People don't
that we're
know.
just, they're following state law and we're helping them out.
Is this a regular bingo night somewhere?
It's at the mobile home.
Yeah.
Do it for the residents.
Village out there, yeah.
Is it
There's
something
a-
they do all the time?
Once a week or
Oh.
something, or twice a month, I'm
Let me
not
write
sure.
that
Tuesday.
down.
What
time?
It's bingo.
What are the prizes like?
But generally, they pay out everything they take in except for a small administrative fee, and it's not a large game, but it's ongoing, and someone pointed out to them that they were not compliant with the law, so we're helping them fix that.
Okay.
Huh? Okay.
And we do have groups like the Knights still run their bingo, the Lions used to, don't no longer do it. But the state gambling folks are on those guys like a
Yes,
hawk.
because it is considered
Once,
gambling.
yeah. So, okay, any discussion on that item? All right, then we'll go to item number 6. Development Code amendments, Mr. McLaughlin.
That'll be me, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, excuse me,
That's okay.
Jeff, Mr. Pregler, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. The Planning and Zoning Commission, in working with staff on its annual work program, has prioritized the processing of development code amendments. So over the next several months, the commission and the council will be reviewing a number of code amendments to come before you as part of that work program. That's going to be kind of phase one of this work program. Phase two will be staff kind of updating the council on the implementation of the general plan objectives and goals. As you recall, the general plan was approved in 2014 by the voters, and once again have to be updated and ratified by the voters in 2024. So we felt this is a good opportunity for us to kind of take a look at what's been implemented to this point, what needs to be accomplished in the next 5 years, which will help us then to include additional goals and policies for the next general plan 2040 or whatever we call it. So, but by this point, we're focusing here on the code amendments. So the three amendments discussed before you this evening, are ranked as the highest priority by the Commission simply because they are considered minor revisions and considered simply just corrections in the development code. So the first amendment that's being proposed has to do with Section 151.04004, supplementary district regulations. Staff is proposing that we remove this section, as many of these requirements are found under the property maintenance codes, and this is duplicative language. So this is why we're recommending this removal.
Questions? Okay.
Okay. The second one has to do with home-based businesses. Now, currently, the development code prohibits vehicle repairs and vehicle detailing services. However, it does not currently prohibit vehicle sales. The city in the recent past has had some issues with people selling vehicles on property, residential properties, specifically the storing of vehicles on properties. What this amendment is proposing is to prohibit vehicle sales on residential properties. And the definition of vehicle sales would be the sale of 2 or more vehicles on the property at any given time. We feel that by including this, it provides additional enforcement powers if we get more complaints about the sale of vehicles.
And the comment I'll share with you, this gets to, there are a number of places in town where there are folks that are working on cars that seem to take 3 and 4 and 5 years, same cars, in many cases, they don't get moved. And the idea is, I bought this car, I'm gonna fix it up, I'm gonna sell it.
Right.
So it's a sales car type thing. And when they have 4 or 5 in the front yard, it bothers the neighbors.
Yes.
It may be a fire hazard, it may be other issues too, but the bottom line is we want them to be able to do that, if that's somebody's main business, is to fix a car and then sell it. Buy a car, fix it up, sell it. They certainly are welcome to do that, but if gets more than 2, it's probably a real business, not a home hobby type thing.
Yeah.
Or supplemental income.
I don't know if that's addressed in the way that's worded though.
I don't either.
Jeff, am I off base?
Well, you're correct in fact that that's kind of where the genesis of this language came from. In actuality, a few months ago, there was actually a home-based business permit issued for something exactly like that, where somebody indicated they wanted to sell vehicles, and they were working on them over a 2 to 3 year period, and they have 4 or 5 of these vehicles. And what happens is a lot of property maintenance issues came into effect, such as the idea of junk vehicles being located in front yards and side yards, things of that sort. So what this is trying to do is it's trying to prohibit those types of vehicle sales on these properties. If it's 1 sale, it's okay. 2 sales, again, we're into the problems of some of these property maintenance sales.
Don't we already, and I understand that it doesn't go directly here to home-based businesses, but I think it does address some of the problem that you're trying to get to with this. Don't we already have an ordinance on the books that says all vehicles on a property have to be able to be moved? Like you have to be able to.
It should be operable. Yeah,
That's the word I'm
right,
looking
yeah.
for, is operable.
Right, so you can have 1 project car, but it needs to be covered if it's located in the front yard.
So I guess for me, I'm not sure what this adds to that already.
Well, it provides greater enforcement powers. So
But
somebody,
how? And by this I'm
Yeah.
saying
Oh.
is you're saying as defined as a sale of 2 or more vehicles. If I have 1 vehicle and I'm saying, oh, I'm not selling that, selling this one, but I'm not selling that one. Like, how do you, and that's what I don't.
Yeah, and I guess this question for council is what is the threshold for, between, you know, a residential,
Sure.
like, sale of a personal vehicle versus a car lot?
Well,
You know,
the state
so what,
is 7.
is it,
The state is 7. If you sell
okay,
more than 7
well,
in a year,
but
you
when
get a
does it
license.
fundamentally alter the residential character of a neighborhood? If you have 3 cars lined up in a front yard, is it 2 cars? That's the policy question before you. And the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation was the line should be no more than 1 car.
And they had a lot of discussion on this.
Right, so-
Yeah.
I just, for me, I'm just not sure that this
Yeah.
is actually going to
What-
address.
Yeah, what if they just say, I'm not selling this one
That's
right
what I'm
now?
saying.
Yeah, and I agree
Yeah.
the same. If I just sit one there, say it's personal use, as long as it's operable, I can sell one.
And registered.
Yes,
Sure.
ma'am.
And look, sure, I'm okay,
Well,
I'm
you
okay,
said
but, yeah.
all the vehicles have to be operable.
That's what I'm saying,
So
so I'm
anyway.
not
Or
sure
you can
that
have
this,
one
Registered.
that's not.
And registered.
If they're parked on the street, they have to be registered.
they have to be registered.
Yeah,
If they're parked on the street.
Yeah, it's on the street.
Matt, doesn't this also have something to do though with, and I'm just asking,
Only if they're on the
has to do with having a home-based business license within the city too? What we're saying you can do
Right,
as
so
a
if you wanted to
licensed
do auto
business.
sales at your residence, you know, we're proposing a cap on the number of vehicles you can sell
that you
as
can
a
have
home-based business.
sitting in the front yard for
Right.
sale. Yeah, that's my understanding of
Otherwise,
why
there's
this
no
was
cap, and then we can sell 5 or 6 vehicles.
at
any
a
given
time.
at the house.
Mhm.
There's a cap. The state sets one too.
Well, the state says 7, maybe, I don't know.
In a whole
I have
year,
no
in
idea.
a year.
In a year.
In a
In a
year,
year.
that's right. But I think the P and Z's, and my understanding from their discussion is, and what Matt and Jeff are talking about, is we don't want someone to have 7 vehicles sitting in their front yard at a time
I agree.
With the for sale sign on.
with the for sale sign on them. I would not certainly like that if I drove through my neighborhood and saw it.
Oh, you and me both.
So that's what this, my
Yeah.
understanding is what
And-
this is trying to do.
And I agree, but I also agree with Christine and Carolyn. I don't know if this does that, because if I have 3 vehicles that operate, I can sell one at a time until I sell them all.
Yeah, but one of those 3 is gonna be your quote personal vehicle. See, there's ways to get around this. You could have,
There's always
you
ways
could
to
have
get around
3, and these are my personal vehicles, and I'm only
Right.
gonna put set for sale signs, but if somebody gives me an offer on the fancy car I've been driving,
Exactly.
it's gone.
Well, I mean, to
Yeah, I
me,
just
that's
don't
like,
know
if you
how
wanna,
they
if you
can-
wanna buy my awesome $200,000 car, or 200,000-mile car I'm driving right now, it's for sale.
Oh, right, yeah.
But like,
Money
but
talks.
I'm not
She's doing an
sure, I
ad
still
during a
feel like this is
council
vague, that's all. That's what I
Okay,
feel.
well, the other option is just to prohibit the commercial sale of vehicles for
And-
home-based
Totally.
businesses.
That is the other
Because what
option.
I got a little confused here is, are you talking about a person who has taken out a license to sell a car? And who, I mean, a permit, and who does that?
Dealers.
As opposed to
No, I mean home.
somebody, my next door neighbor, having 3 cars parked in their
Well, in the
driveway.
instance that Jeff
I'm lost
raised,
here.
there was an individual who started a commercial
Okay.
sales business, truck sales business. You refurbish them and sell them. They're all registered in his name,
Okay.
and they filled up his front yard, and there were
Okay.
numerous complaints.
Okay.
And it's not commonplace, but I mean, it did prompt the question to the Planning and Zoning Commission as to whether this is something we want to regulate as a city.
I see.
And so it's just the question of scope.
And
You know,
really, it's
whether-
the car lot in the middle of a residential area is probably not appropriate.
Right, and that's what
That's
we
really-
argued in our code enforcement case that ultimately prevailed in court.
So you
However-
still won in the court case even though we didn't have this ordinance?
It was, I'm
Yeah,
not
but we
even
had
sure
to
it was
go to
contested.
court.
I don't think he showed.
So even without the ordinance, we
Yeah, we
still
argued
were
it
able-
fundamentally altered the residential
And I
character,
don't
which is a
disagree-
standard of review.
And I don't disagree with
It
that, I'm
just
just saying.
adds strength.
But we don't
To
want,
our
we don't want to
argument.
go to court on every issue like
Right.
this.
I totally understand, I just have
we would like
concerns
to
with
just-
overregulation.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that.
We could stipulate as part of the permit issuance, you know, a number that we feel, you know, will not affect, again. the-
2 is a reasonable number is what you're saying.
2 for sale.
For sale.
See, I don't know.
It says 1. Right.
Yeah, it says one.
We
so-
went through this with
It says two
BMC.
or
I mean,
more.
I got a, for example, and I know
So
everything's
that's one.
case by case,
So it's one.
but let's say
You
I'm,
can't have two or more, so that's one. Right.
yes.
Yes, it's one. Yes.
This was also discussed heavily
So,
Yes.
for
Yeah, I can
clarification
read the
in
other
P and
reading.
Z.
That's what it says, one.
Yeah, so maybe
So
it
is
should
one. Yeah,
say,
you're right. Maybe that language needs to be clarified to say only one
Yeah,
vehicle should be
okay.
available at a time. So it's clear, because that implies that we may have two
Right.
at one time.
I-
It's confusing.
I got,
Language
I guess
confusing.
a scenario question, because I've been there, and I think a lot of people in this community have been there. If I am stationed here for 3 years, me and my spouse have 2 vehicles, and I'm getting deployed or moved to Germany, and I don't want to take them, and I want to sell them, I have 2 vehicles for sale. And it eliminates me from doing that.
No, wait a minute, doesn't,
But that's
because you're
different.
driving those vehicles, they're not sitting in your front yard with for sale signs on them, never moving.
But
My husband asked me the same exact question, because we
But
have
they'll
5
be there,
vehicles.
that I agree with
Before.
Christine, that's not what that says, because at
Well,
night,
the
both
first,
of
you gotta
them
read
will
the
be
first,
there.
read the first line up there.
Business.
If you're a home-based business,
You can't have a
you're
license
selling,
for a
you're
home-based
selling
business.
2 cars, getting ready to go to Germany, and you're a home-based business?
Well, I think half the people that are doing that aren't gonna register as a home-based business though, Mr. Mayor.
That's
I think
exactly-
they're
That's the
gonna
way
do it
around.
illegal anyway,
That's,
without
Well, if they're not, if
registering.
they're a home-based business, it's not illegal.
yeah.
I'm with you.
There's not a right or wrong answer to this.
It's
a
It's
hard one.
ultimately, again, fundamentally a policy question.
Well, this
We pose
this
to
is
council
one of those
for
things I think we
feedback
need to
discussion.
try, see how it
Right.
works. If it doesn't work, or we need to amend it or reject it, then we do it down the road. But I think this is,
It's a
well,
step.
based on, right now, one incident where this guy with all his trucks,
That's
it
great.
may be worthwhile, and we may never hear it again.
You're saying you just can't have a business license to sell vehicles?
In a
That's
residential
essentially
area.
what, in a residential area, that's what we're saying.
That,
sell
no,
vehicles.
that
No,
would
he's
be,
going further.
You can sell
that
one.
would be
Oh, you-
one alternative.
Yeah.
The alternative that's being proposed is if you will permit the sale of auto in connection with the home-based business, but you're limited to 1 vehicle at a time.
Sitting in your front yard. saying for
Do
sale.
you get a lot of permit requests to be a car sales business in
People
a
sell cars
residential
on
neighborhood?
Facebook every day.
No, I don't.
Does that come up
think
very often?
Not very often.
So I guess that's my main concern. So now we had one problem which we overcame, and now we're gonna go into regulation for it. I have some issues with that.
Well, the other way to do it is just in the somewhere in the residential code to say sales of autos are prohibited.
No.
In residential neighborhoods?
No.
Commercial
No,
sales,
because
commercial sales, commercial sales. of
Then it
autos
needs to be
are
under
prohibited.
home-based businesses.
Yeah,
So
right, under
that-
home-based
that-
business.
you go
So
back to the
that would
same
be,
issue.
okay, just an exclusion.
So-
That's what you're saying.
I think
Yeah.
that personal.
That'd be the easiest way
Because
to
we
do it.
already, like you said, prohibit detailing and auto repair, so just extend that to include auto sales. would
To me, that
cure
makes
the
the,
issue.
that makes the
Right.
easiest way to do it.
It looks like maybe we separate.
Well, hang on, let's finish talking.
Just a quick question, is there a way we can separate all 3 of these changes into
Well-
separate resolutions?
We-
Well, I think when we
yeah.
vote on them, it's gonna have.
We can do that, we can certainly do that.
But this
But
is just for public
on this-
hearing, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, is it, yeah.
So this is already a public comment.
This
Or
is,
do
yeah,
public-
this
Yeah,
is
it's just said,
public.
okay,
No. But
That's
when
good.
we vote, I think.
when we vote, yeah.
So you can make changes in the interim.
Okay.
So what I would do is I would look at prohibiting in the residential code, commercial business to sell more than 1 car or whatever it is,
At a time.
or a time, or so.
I think
and they need to be
minimum,
separate.
that's what has to,
They need to
make
be,
it
and each
clear.
one of these items, when they come up for a vote, needs to be separated, or if there are 2 that look like they're gonna fly, you can put 2 together in this one for separate discussion. Because I don't think the council, you can get a unanimous vote on all 3 of these in one, or a passing vote on all 3 of these in one shot. There may be one that we need to separate.
And you can remove
One
an
other-
item or separate it
Yeah.
as well.
Jeff, you mentioned something about repairs, and I think that caught my attention. If you're talking about a business that's going to do car repairs in the front yard, not for sale, but if the business is to repair vehicles, that's a whole nother creature.
It's
It's
current
not-
address.
It's currently prohibited.
Oh, okay, is that what you said? Okay, I
Yes.
missed that. I
It
thought you were
didn't
saying.
used to be, but it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's smart. Good job.
Okay.
So, okay.
So it sounds like what we want to do is maybe reword this a little bit. Not
I
necessarily.
think I heard the mayor say that he wants it placed in the residential code.
Yeah, I would
across-
recommend it.
not just
A
in
cleaner way to do it is to
businesses.
prohibit that business in the residential area and do it in the
Mhm.
residential code. Maybe a better way to do it. And again, you need to talk
Instead
to
of
Nathan
extending
to find out
businesses.
which would have more validity if we do go back to a court issue.
Mhm.
So,
So you're
So
saying
not
no
allow
set,
them
no
at all.
vehicles
No,
at
no.
all in a
No
residential
sale of
neighborhood.
more than one vehicle at a time in a
Okay,
residential
he's
zoning
saying
yeah,
district,
no, that's,
It still falls into the.
God's a business.
regardless of whether you're a home-based business or a private citizen.
Yeah, because you can do it as a hobby.
Okay. I just want to
It's a shift.
anecdotally say is that I think it's hilarious that PNC addressed the easy issues first, by the way.
These were the
They were like,
easy
let's do
ones.
the easy
hard
ones
one.
first.
Oh gosh, have
Yeah.
mercy, what's coming up?
Personal property is always a
have-
hard one. I mean,
That is
it's-
staff is gonna come back with us with a different
Well,
proposal on this one.
Yeah.
Is
Okay.
there, Jeff, any other amendments? Is this number 3 or is this number 2?
Fine.
Ours number 2.
Okay.
We get one more.
Number
three.
The other one's easy.
Next one is
Oh, no.
easy.
The other one we good.
Okay,
It
so
months.
the last one relates to the sign regulations. Currently, as many of you see, the shopping center signs all over town, they have various different panels with different business names, as we see in the photo here. Right now, the development code says each one of these panels have to be a minimum of 9 square feet. And the reason why this was put in the development code originally, a number of years ago, was because many of these shopping center signs had panels that were really, really small, trying to fit in as many businesses as they could on these signs, and you couldn't read them from the roadway. So it was somewhat of a distraction to drivers, and then your eyes are off the roadway, you're trying to read some of these signage. Since that time, many of the older multi-tenant signs, shopping center signs have been modernized and have much bigger panels than they once did, so it's not as much of a problem as it was at one point. Many of the sign contractors and businesses in town have complained about this existing rule stating that it really prohibits them from adding all the businesses on the signs, not enough room. Because 75 square feet is the maximum square footage for these shopping center signs. And within that 75 square feet, you have to fit in all the panels of all the businesses. In addition to which, you have to have the name of the plaza or the shopping center on the sign, as you see there. So it really limits the number of businesses that could be on the sign. So for that reason, staff is recommending we eliminate that 9 square foot requirement for these panels.
The 9 square foot requirement is the individual signs,
Individual panels, that is
individual
correct.
panels. And then the 75 square feet
The
is the
overall-
entire overall.
Overall
Okay.
maximum.
That's right.
And I'm gonna, before we discuss it here, I'm gonna ask, I'm gonna pick on a representative from the chamber. Have your members got any heartburn with this, or are they aware of this? Because we got a 30-day public comment coming up.
I don't believe they are aware of it, so.
Okay. Could you
make
help
them
us?
aware.
Could you help us to make sure they're aware? Okay.
Absolutely.
This way.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes,
I
sir.
just, maybe a suggestion, no minimum size, but up to the number of tenants in that building. That way you don't have,
So what are you actually saying there? That confuses me.
all right, so if I can put a minimum size amount, I can actually advertise in that space. So I can have one business with 5 signs that are different things.
Yes.
Sure.
And the idea was that we wanted to leave that flexibility up to the property owner, let them
Yeah,
decide,
let them
let it
pick
divvy out
it out.
what businesses they want to put in those signs and how big they want to do it.
Ma'am.
And I'll just throw out, just because we're doing this, the original reason for the size of the sign was to have motorists be able to only spend a minimal amount of time looking at signs, and their safety of keeping their eyes on the road would be there.
Right.
Once we are able to change the size of those signs, then there are a certain group of people who will be looking and spending more time trying to, I mean, that's just going to happen, that we won't be able to see those signs. So that's just putting it out there. I know a lot of folks use GPS nowadays, and so well, some GPS will take them other places, but it would be helpful. I think having the larger print is really nice.
That's fine.
And-
We're limiting font size.
That's that group of that's that
Oh, it's
population
not
segment
the
you're
font
talking
size.
about?
I'm not sure which demographic that is. I'm just guessing. Some people have a hard time seeing that.
It'll pop up on your phone anyway.
But that's a good point you just made, that font size is not part of this. Size sign is. Oh, yeah, so that does make that, if, you know, if the
Give them
businesses choose to use the
flexibility.
larger.
Different kinds of businesses need
It'll
different
pop
kinds of
up on your
signs.
phone. You'll see it as you text.
Okay. Any other discussion on this
I use
one?
my device when I'm driving.
Okay.
Well,
Thank you, Mr. Prigler.
Thank you.
Then
Maybe we thank you.
We'll move on to, under new business, we have the Holiday Pueblo del Sol Phase 5, Mr. McLaughlin.
I will do this one as well, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, are you present on Thursday too?
Tell us something.
Matt's on vacation.
Are you doing this Thursday too, right?
I was handling Thursday.
Oh, you're handling Thursday, okay. Are you gonna do the first one on Thursday?
No, he's doing both.
Okay, because I was changing up the order here. Okay.
All right, so this is a request for approval of a preliminary plat. This is requested from Castle and Cook, Arizona. Look at the map on the screen. We're talking, the final, phase 5 is located just north of Canada Flores and Highway 92 intersection. We have the commercial Canada Flores shopping center here, with McDonald's located here. The additional phases of Holiday are located here. Retreat subdivision is located right here. And here's the plat itself. There's going to be, the zoning of the property is multifamily residence, as it is for the rest of the other phases of Holiday. The developers are proposing to construct single-family residential homes, detached. The minimum lot size for the zoning is 4,500 square feet, although the developer is proposing to construct lots that are much larger than this. That is the minimum lot size. Number of lots proposed are 59. These will be private roadways. The minimum width of the roadways will be 31 feet. The development code does state that the width for private roads can be 26 feet, so they're more than meeting that requirement. And then, again, there's a requirement that all subdivision plats have to have a letter of water adequacy from DPWR. In this case, the PDS Water Company did receive that letter of water adequacy from DPWR on May 17, 2013. For all subdivisions served by the PDS Water Company, therefore have this adequate water supply designation. This concludes staff's report. It was approved by P&Z last Tuesday and the DRC earlier. So, any questions?
Go ahead.
Couple of questions. Is there any conversation around the fact that their adequate water supply was 2013, this is 2019, does it last forever, or? Okay.
As long as they have continuous development, it is.
When did Holiday start? 2013?
No, lower than that. I would say it's been at least probably 10 years.
2009
And-
time frame.
Yeah.
2009?
Yeah, 2009.
And the 59 lots, how many total does that put into to Holiday? I keep wanting to say Tribute. Holiday, do you know?
I have to look. I don't know the total.
And my reason for asking that is it took this long, from at least 10 years perhaps, for this number, whatever that is, of homes to go in. And I think it's important to recognize that they're not putting 200 homes in 2 years. That it's taken 10 years to put in all of these
And
homes.
actually, if I remember correctly, I, as a citizen, before I was on council, spoke about the initial platting of this because they wanted to do a different type of homes than we're doing, and that was prior to 1999.
Oh, wow.
So the process is longer than we realize in some of these cases.
And one final, go ahead.
Go ahead.
The final thing is you mentioned that it was something for multifamily homes,
No,
but they want to put it,
The zoning is multifamily residence,
Okay.
but they're still doing single-family residential detached homes.
That's an option under that quarter.
under that zoning?
Yeah, that is allowed under
Okay.
multifamily.
So
Small lot
multifamily,
sizes.
Yeah, small lot size and smaller setbacks.
okay. When you say multifamily, is that apartment buildings?
It
Can
Or
be.
condos?
Can be.
Or duplex.
But you have the option of doing single?
Single family.
Okay. I think that covered.
They do have open space, right?
There is a country club there with the swimming pool.
Okay.
I think there's a homeowners association, which everybody has.
And there's also you see the drainage area there on the
The dark-
southwest, the
the
dark
dark-
part, that's also, they also got some trails in there.
Right, there's
too.
also a
Okay.
multi-use path along there.
Yes.
There are trails in that area.
Multi-use paths, yeah.
Ours?
No, there's.
No, there's.
Rachel, did you have something?
No, I was just gonna say, I think Gwen has a really good point, and to add to her point is, even though they're getting the plat done and the preliminary plat, they're not gonna build all these houses until they're sold. They might build a couple of spec homes, because I think, there's one part of Holiday that's still not completely
Yeah.
built out.
In the lower right, yeah.
So it takes even longer, yeah.
It's based on market demand, and of course,
Yeah.
don't forget, the retreat is in there as well. They
That's what I was meaning, the retreat, yeah.
Yeah, the retreat, and also, then the final place is Chaparral Village North. So they've had a number of different developments they've been working on over the past 10 years.
Well,
Oh, no, Mr. Mayor, that was,
okay, you got it covered?
yes, sir. I'm good.
Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
I've heard concerns about, I think it's called clear cutting the property, not saving trees and, what do you call it, natural,
Native plant salvage?
native plant, yes. Do we do
Yes,
that
we
in
do.
Sierra Vista?
We do.
Okay,
For example, the most recent one we did was Pinata Vista subdivision. You might see it up in Coronado and Busby.
uh-huh.
And the master gardeners used to help us with that.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And that's why that whole location by the University of Arizona, that's where they would store the
Uh-huh.
plants.
That's right, yeah.
Before they could
I
go
remember
back.
that, yeah.
So,
So I remember years ago too that when you bought a home new, the builder would offer you plants to put. There was the builder just decided to let you have plants. Does that still happen?
I don't know, you have to talk to the builders. We're not
depends.
involved
Are
in
you talking
that.
about for individual lots, or are you talking about?
Yeah, individual
Yeah.
homeowners, they would say, do you want a pine tree or do you want
Yeah,
a
they
whatever?
they
Do they
offer
still-
you a landscaping.
Landscape
Package.
For the
Oh,
front.
okay,
For the front yard.
For the front yard.
for the front yard, right.
But
But
there's
we,
not a landscape code requirement
No,
for
no.
single family.
No,
There's no landscape code requirement for that.
Right.
It's something
It
that
just-
commercial.
That
Other
they-
than prohibiting
Just
turf in the
development.
front yard.
it just depends.
okay.
Okay.
Turf would be awesome. It's in there.
Okay. Anything else on the PDS Phase 5? Okay.
So we're just approving that they go, I mean, if we choose to.
This is approves the plat, so they can start the preliminary plat.
Final plat submitted.
Can you show
Okay.
the map again of the proposal?
What'd you say?
She wants to see the map.
That one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that, yeah. Had friends who
Here's
were very
the Resort Drive, and here's the commercial.
And that's what I spoke with Ben. I told them they'd never sell those, is what I told them.
Sometimes we're all.
And I'm sure Mr. Kaufman.
What are you looking into, sir?
There's park homes that would
What
sell
were you
those trailer
asking?
homes.
I was just wanted to see the.
You just want to see the
map.
plat again.
Yeah.
Anything about it you were,
Oh, I was just kind of orienting myself.
oh, okay.
Okay, so that ends item 7. Discussion on item 8, which is the regular meeting minutes for September 2006. Hopefully everybody's seen those. Any additions, completion, corrections, editing of the minutes?
I'm just curious why it's there and
Not
not.
on the top.
Yeah.
What happened?
Yeah.
I actually think that, I was wondering. if
Well,
I
normally
think that's
normally what we do is we put it up front so that we can do a consent agenda, but when there's one item on the consent agenda, it doesn't make sense to
Is
do
that
that.
my- okay.
So it just
So
got
it probably got
That's
bumped
my first
bumped to
time
the bottom.
seeing it.
I'm not gonna say Maria might have forgot to put it up in the front, but
No, generally we do the
Oh.
public hearing.
I'm not gonna throw her under the bus, but
It's just
She
new
just wants to see if
business.
we're paying attention.
yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. So, anything else on the meeting for Thursday? Okay, then we'll go on to item 2, report on recent trips, meetings, future meetings. I'll be spending a little time with the Regional Transportation Advisory Council meeting in, I think it's the morning, next week in the morning of this, I want to say 16th and 17th, they may be off a day, just to go up, since that's being hosted. It's a statewide meeting that's being hosted by our MPO. So I'm going up basically to show the flag. I didn't see anything really other than a couple things on the second day that were significant that we needed to be there for. So
Mayor, what was that date again?
16th and 17th, I think.
17th is the,
Yeah.
Oh, that's the one I want to
Yeah.
go with you to.
I'm gonna go to the 17th.
I'm just
Yeah.
going with him to the.
Just something, if we're double booked Thursday for the mayor manager's lunch and then the SSVC community leaders lunch. I know the mayor's going to
Mayor managers.
Victoria's going to
SSVC.
SSVC, so I haven't decided which one.
And I saw the SSVEC at the Rotary Club on Monday, so I've seen that briefing already.
Okay, so,
We're going to SSVC.
so anyway, if people need rides or whatever, the mayor managers.
Where's it going to be?
Wachuca City. And the other one is the Country Club. PDS. Anything else on recent trips, meetings, future meetings? Okay. Under board and commission updates, I don't know whether to start with this or do it under future discussion items, but I basically got my slides essentially done to be able to brief you on potential changes or lead the discussion on potential changes for commissions. The only thing I have to do yet is I have to verify that what was in the commission handbook, the summary of the mission of each one of those commissions, is in fact what is in the legal document, what that we approved in the resolution. So I need to get with Jill's folks to dig out those resolutions for me to make sure that we're talking the same language and we're covering all the bases. But what I see doing is being able to sit down and in a work session basically do a briefing on boards and commissions and propose with some proposed changes. What I'd like to do is be able to give you time to digest those, discuss those, think about those for a couple of weeks, and then maybe have a special work session just for that item to knock out what we want to give guidance to staff on the changes we can agree on. And then that would come back to council after the work session for actual action, etc. So that's coming up, and it's not a lot of changes, and most of it's based on conversations we've had, as well as the things we did in 2016 with the boards and commissions, which a number of the new council people weren't a party to. So it should be an interesting discussion, and hopefully I'll be able to keep it on focus, which is going to be a challenge.
So Rick, may I suggest that we inform our commissions of this work session so that they can attend?
Well, I don't have,
Hear it firsthand.
I don't have a problem with that.
Okay, I knew you wouldn't.
Yeah, I
I
don't
just
have a
wanted to
problem
be sure that I think
And-
in order to avoid all the miscommunication that
Miscommunication.
happened before,
Okay.
that everybody can
And-
at least have the
and they-
option to be here.
And they're as far as I'm concerned, they can come to the briefing.
Yeah. That's going
Which
to be a work
will
session,
be a
right?
work session. They also can come to the discussion at a work session later when we try to hammer out whether we're going to do it, whether we're not going to do it, whether it's a good idea, whether it's a bad idea, whatever. But again, that's the discussion of the council. They can sit there and listen,
Right.
obviously.
I think that's great.
Yeah, okay.
Did you say it? Did you say a date? I missed it.
What I'm hoping to be able to do is the next regular work session if we don't have a lot of other stuff on the.
That would be
But
the
again,
briefing?
that would be the briefing part of it.
Okay.
And we'll get that firmed up within the next week or so when I get this last little piece done. And we'll get the slides, and obviously I want to run the slides by the management staff too, so that they're not surprised, or if I forgot something, they can say, hey, knucklehead, you forgot this.
I don't think they'll say that.
Well,
Oh, yeah, somebody would say it.
yeah, or think it anyway.
Oh.
Okay, so that's all I've got on boards and commissions, and that kind of future discussion items as well. Anybody else on board commission liaison reports? Okay, future discussion items, we just talked about one. Any council requests or future discussion items?
I don't know if this is a request or just a question. They had the coffee with a cop when recently, and yeah, thank you. And I heard from an officer that was there that a lot of people were asking about the change on when ADOT, after they did construction, I guess they changed the arrows, the mismatching turn arrows, that they're not. Have you been receiving complaints about?
And that's, you're talking about the
Or
intersection
maybe
over there by
Public
the
Works
sheriff's,
knows.
by the sheriff's thing?
That's one of them. There's been a
Avenida
few.
Cochise,
Avenida
Avenida
Cochise came up, and
Sure, you've been getting
an
any
overly
complaints?
long arrow on Coronado.
Or are you talking about timing?
Well, one of them is a timing issue. The other, they said it was mismatched, like it hasn't been consistent.
Lead and non-lead.
Yeah.
Which is something,
Sharon,
if it
are you
is
aware of
ADOT,
this?
SVNPO,
Yeah,
people
and some
need
of
to.
them have been switched back. What it is it's called non-simultaneous phasing. And
Yeah.
the biggest issues is when you have non-protected movement, so you have the permissive protected phasing that allows someone to make a left turn even though there's oncoming traffic, as opposed to green and red arrow kind of situation. That's when you can run into some potential safety issues. I can tell you they switched Avenue to Cochise in 92 back. The main gate, the east gate, the Van Diemen gate is all protected movements, and that's why they can do it there with no issues. Foothills, they may have switched back as well. I know ADOT was looking at it.
Well, can you check on that to
Sure.
verify that?
Thank you.
And if the MPO needs to weigh in, let me know. We can certainly do that. But really, that's between city and
State.
the state.
Yeah, I
And
know.
getting that worked out. That's always that coordination's always been a problem, especially when there's been a change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, excuse me, go ahead.
No, if it's on the same topic, go ahead.
It's not.
Okay. I would actually like to talk about moving the work sessions back upstairs. I've actually had a lot of people speak to me that they don't feel comfortable coming down here because it's so crowded, and I don't ever want our citizens to feel like they can't come in and watch us. So I'd like to discuss that. I think it was something that we tried, and maybe we need to.
And we do have a lot of audio issues in here.
I know
In here.
down here.
So,
Yeah.
does anybody have any objection to doing the next couple up top?
You know, one of the reasons we came down here was because it felt more communicative for us to sit around a table. The original idea was that we would have a table like this upstairs in front of the, what do you call the place where we normally
Dais.
sit?
Guys, yeah.
The thrones that we normally sit on.
have mercy, not a throne.
And then there was issues with trying to get microphones and
Yeah.
stuff. So I concede then that I prefer it upstairs, other than having to sit here and look. No, I'm kidding. Sitting here and looking.
I think staff looks pretty good most days.
So that's my own personal
So-
joke.
So, is there any objection to doing the next one upstairs?
No, we're good.
And as long as the room's available.
The room is available.
Okay, so we can do it upstairs. That's fine.
That's our room.
Any other requests or future discussion items? Okay,
I have a request.
ma'am.
We have talked about in the past, and we were waiting for a decision to come out on like a social media policy for the council.
Oh, she's right.
Yes.
Wait.
And what's this,
We don't have it yet.
we need a status update is what we need.
So the league released the International Municipal Lawyers Association draft policy, and they're in the process of drafting one specific to Arizona, because it's the one I sent to all of council, and it's vague, and there's spaces that say
And 31
please insert
pages.
or refer
Yeah.
to your law, your state's laws
Yeah.
there. So I had talked to Christina with the league, and she said she's drafting one and she'll have it out soon for councils to
And Christine is the legal beagle up there.
Werther, yes, the league lawyer.
Okay.
Okay.
So and then that's another start of a process, because we take that template and then we need to go through the staff to see what fits, what doesn't fit, what may be more efficient, what's in there that's less efficient, all that kind of stuff. And then come back to us for a policy, and that is a strategic planning item. I'm trying to remember, it's not.
No,
No,
that's something that
it's just something we've been
We
struggling
well,
just
we talk about like the
Okay.
league conference. We talked about wanting to bring up things we learned from the league conference.
Okay.
That was a session several of us attended,
Okay.
and
including the mayor.
including yourself.
Yeah, I know.
And
I was
it
probably
was
sleeping in
brought
the
up
back.
as a real need
Could you remind
for
us
that
what we heard?
policy.
Coming out, Miss
I have my notes on hand.
No, you do.
That snoring
Okay.
you heard in the background was probably
Yeah.
me.
He looked very
It
awake.
was.
Any-
He was
anything
really
else?
alert for that.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for attending. We have no other items on the agenda, so we'll adjourn the meeting. See everybody on Thursday at least, if not before.
I see we have a citizen here, a couple of citizens who